Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar. We'll have a look at the UKV, look at the precipitation and the temperature as we do head into the Christmas period. It's looking likely we're going to start really around average, if not slightly milder than average for most. And as we head through the Christmas period, it does look likely it will turn quite a bit colder in the north. We thought a few days ago that that sort of air mass that's lingering in the north will spread southwards, could turn into a prolonged cold spell. That is not looking likely anymore, but most of the models, including the short-range models now, do have that cold air mass pushing southwards at times. And as we'll see on the GFS in a minute, it has that air mass in place through Boxing Day, the 27th and the 28th, and even produces quite a huge snow event for many areas through central and southern England. Now again, I wouldn't take the chart too literally, but we will have a look at it regardless, as it is producing significant snow from a very small feature, small little low pressure system bumping into that cold air. But it does look like for a few days at least in the Christmas period, it will go quite widely cold before turning more towards average in the south and staying cold in the north as we head into the new year. One thing though is, if we're looking for sort of sustained colder spells, there are signs of blocking hanging around, but as we saw in yesterday's video, some of the runs generally have low pressure dominating Greenland and Canada over the course of the next week or two, which could mean that we stay pretty westerly. Doesn't mean we go mild necessarily, the jet stream could still be shifted southwards, but any majorly cold, those chances are diminishing if we keep this signal for very low heights to our north, generally promoting a strong jet stream in from the west. So I'll have a look at the various longer range models and the ensembles in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, which do like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, we do have generally quite an unsettled picture around at the moment. We did see a lot of rain earlier in the afternoon, but as I'm recording this, around just before 4 p.m, it's turning drier, but there's still quite a bit of cloud and showers breaking out quite widely in places. Heavier showers across Scotland, some of these turning to snow over the highest ground as colder air does start to filter in. And again, it's the signs that northerly wind is going to try and push in towards the end of this working week into the Christmas period, and it could, as I said, linger southwards as well. See, more batches of rain will be heading our way, so it is going to be pretty much luck of the draw whether you see heavier rain over the course of the next few days. There will be bouts around, it's just about dodging those, and we'll have a look at those in detail in the UKV in a minute. Now, after you put on the temperatures, you'll be able to see it is pretty mild. If we zoom out, you'll be able to see that those temperatures are widely sort of blues to yellows, indicating temperatures in around sort of the 8 to sort of 10 degree mark widely, maybe locally slightly warmer. Again, it is cooling down because that real mild air mass that moved through on Sunday and Monday is losing its strength. Of course, that sort of air mass can't sustain itself this far northwards, but it still is lingering, and you can see how it's pretty mild across most of northwest Europe. Eastern Europe much colder, and you can see North America is turning bitterly cold as well. So the blocking that's to our north that had been producing the very cold weather for the first half of December is now producing very cold weather for North America through the Christmas period, with areas even into parts of Florida potentially seeing snow towards this weekend, or at least later this week. Potentially even frosts down into the Everglades, potentially with that. Again, no expert on American forecast, but that is pretty rare feat getting very cold air that far southwards, and it will power the jet stream into next week. And that's why generally, even though there is blocking around, cold air masses trying to push in, we will maintain a general westerly flow, so that's just going to power up the jet stream heading our way. So if we do go over to the UKV and have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, if we do start today, you can see all those showers that spread through earlier, turning gently dry of course this afternoon and evening before more rain heads in for tomorrow morning, especially along the far south coast, and into tomorrow just generally cloud around and a lot of showers in the south, seeing the most rain as these low pressure systems slide in. You can see it's turning slightly dry across Scotland, some showers around, some wintry, and that is the sign of a more of a northerly flow starting to come in, with more of those showers turning to snow. Heavy rain does push through again through Friday morning, so Friday rush hour through central England could be quite miserable there. Very heavy rain initially before sort of turning lighter as it heads northwards, and could produce quite a bit of snow through Scotland. Could even see a warning for that through Christmas Eve there. As we head through the 24th, you can see just a lot of heavy showers around, and as we head into Christmas Day, you can see colder air is moving in from the north, and for most, for 3 p.m. on Christmas Day, it is generally dry, showers into northern England, maybe the far southeast, and snow into Scotland, so could see a technical white Christmas here for many parts of Scotland, perhaps in terms of showers, and maybe even Northern Ireland as well, a bit of winteriness mixing in there. Again, this can change though, because it's sort of 4 days away now, so big uncertainty still with this. The small details could change, but this sort of general setup with still generally average or milder air in the south, colder air in the north will stick. For eventually that cold air does sweep through everywhere, and maybe late on Christmas Day, most areas in Northern Ireland, Scotland, maybe even Northern England, and maybe even parts of the Republic of Ireland could see snow as much colder air does filter in. You can see that on the 850 HP temperatures. For many waking up on Boxing Day, a pretty bitterly cold air mass will be in place. Again, it is a temporary air mass. Most models only have it lasting 2-3 days, but as we'll see the GFS in a minute, it does sweep in a weather front, an area of low pressure from the south through the 27th and Boxing Day, which could give significant snow in places. Again, the ground temperatures won't be that cold after this sort of week of milder weather, so we're not expecting any widespread huge snowfall amounts. Yes, locally we could see snowfall building up from that sort of scenario, but it will sort of be the disruption to travel and generally the sort of winteriness out there and temporary accumulations which could cause trouble. But again, we'll have to see how this does develop. Now, if you also have a look at the dew points, you can see how it's much colder coming in. So even if we don't see any winteriness with it, it will bring a return to sort of frost and fog with colder air mass moving in. So there could be disruption through the Christmas period for that as well. So keep an eye on ice, frost, and then, of course, the risk of snow, especially in the north, but not exclusive if you see that weather front push in. Now, if you do put on the max temperatures, you can see this afternoon it's not particularly cold, widely 8 to 10 degrees, colder in the north, but as expected this time of year. Overnight tonight, many areas remaining in sort of the low to mid single digits, so sort of average for this time of year. Scotland may be touching on a frost, and through tomorrow and Thursday afternoon, widely once again sort of 8 to 10 degrees, maybe peaking at 11 in the south, quite a bit colder in the north. Through Thursday evening, you can see it is turning quite widely colder in the north. Across Scotland, Northern England, and Northern Ireland could be some frosts around, but widely low single digits. The south, 8 to 9 degrees. And by Friday afternoon, look at that, 12 degrees in the south, freezing in Scotland. And it's these collision of air masses starting to appear as we see this battleground between milder air trying to push up from the south and the southwest from a strong jet stream, and colder air filtering in from the north with a bit of blocking still over Greenland. As we head through Christmas Eve, doesn't look particularly great in the south, 10-11 degrees, sort of meh really for Christmas Eve, and for Scotland, really quite cold. As we head into Christmas Day, most will wake up to generally mild conditions of 6-7 degrees, but it won't get particularly mild in the afternoon. Maybe the far south, 10 or 11 degrees further northwards, more seasonable, for cold air does filter through for all into Boxing Day, and most will wake up for Boxing Day for quite a widespread cold conditions, frosts for Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales, Northern England, and Scotland, and it even could filter further southwards and eastwards through Boxing Day. So, does look likely here. It is going to be generally sort of an average, to be slightly above average, Christmas Day for most. Could be quite cold in Scotland and Northern Ireland with maybe some winteriness around. It could shift southwards depending on the individual runs because it still is 4 days away. So, slight timings can change, so the colder air could filter through faster. But again, I'm not expecting anything widely cold through Christmas Day. Boxing Day, though, cold air does look like it will filter southwards, and then we have the risk of widespread wintry hazards for a few days in the Christmas period. Now, if you do look at the GFS, you can see generally we've got a westerly flow at the moment, but still blocking up towards Greenland. And that is why we're going to be seeing cold air trying to get forced in. You can see that northerly wind starting to appear later this week, pushing cold air into Scotland, but staying generally mild in the south. As we head through Boxing Day, you can see that sort of northerly wind takes over, and then you see a small low pressure system develop, and that's why it is very uncertain. It develops and gives snow for the far south and east. Beyond that, we stay in a generally cold northerly airflow for eventually around the 28th, a westerly air mass pushes in. And again, it's from all this westerly momentum from that cold spell breaking out across North America, still blocking to Greenland. So if we didn't have that big push of milder air, or from cold air into North America, pushing the jet stream and pushing the milder air towards us, then perhaps we could have gone into a more prolonged colder spell, but that westerly momentum is overcoming any block. As we head through to the new year, we stay generally quite westerly. Again, that's the run from yesterday. For some reason, those images haven't fully appeared. But you can see for the 31st, we're back into a bit of a northerly wind, so it could be turning a little bit colder there. But again, nothing too crazy. For southwesterly winds do appear once again, and we actually go quite mild into the start of January, trying to build high pressure towards Scandinavia. That is a signal for the longer term, perhaps. Building a Scandinavian high, maybe easterlies into January. The Met Office have issued their sort of month-ahead planner for the weather, and they do think there's an above-average chance of colder January. But we'll have to see how much that does come to fruition. At this stage, we're not seeing anything concrete for the start of January, maybe signs of a high-pressure system towards Scandinavia. But as I said, look towards Greenland and to our north, there's many more low-pressure systems starting to develop, which will power the westerly winds a bit more. Again, still some blocking towards northern Canada, but some of the other runs not showing that as much. If you do go to the beginning of the run and just look at the air masses towards the Christmas period, you can see how we've got a huge collision of air masses. The -10 isotherm trying to push in later this week, but we're staying pretty mild in the south. It's after that when that cold air mass gets pushed through on Boxing Day, and then that little low in the far south-east pushes into that cold air, bringing snow. And we stay in that cold air mass all the way to the 28th before it gets pushed away, and we go generally mild. The cold air is very close to our north, so very subtle shifts could bring that cold air in more through next week. But looking at the time frame of this, things would have to change quite quickly for this to become apparent, and we're not seeing too many of the ensemble members bringing that kit or keeping that cold air in from the south. Definitely, perhaps for Scotland, could go into quite a prolonged cool and wintry spell, which is not too unusual for the winter. But for the south, we're generally more around those sort of average air masses. Beyond that, we stay fairly westerly, still potentially cold in the north. You can see the cold air mass does return for a time there, but staying generally quite mild in the south, maybe turning cold in the north for a time before eventually mild southwesterlies come in for the end of the run. So definitely here, showing generally colder than average in the north. The south, generally average, with colder spurts and milder spurts as well. So we'll have to see exactly how it does play out. But there is the chance of wintriness over the next week or so, perhaps with Boxing Day, 27th and the 28th, but also the chance of mild weather after that as we head into the new year. If you just briefly have a look at the precipitation charts from that GFS run, you'll be able to see that generally it's rain around towards the end of this week in the south, snow in the north. But what happens through Boxing Day? Look at that, precipitation pushing into the southeast, turning to heavy snow through Boxing Day afternoon, for pulling away, staying cold and generally snowy quite widely, and then the 28th, a weather front bumps into Scotland, giving heavy snow there, and elsewhere just rain. So yes, heavy snow perhaps on Monday, but by the time we get to Wednesday, it's turning much milder once again. So it could be a very, very short-lived sort of mini cold spell there. These sort of things can produce very heavy snow, but would we see widespread disruption in accumulations from it? Probably not, simply because the ground temperatures and the air temperatures from this would probably not be much below freezing at all, if that. Probably more towards sort of 1 or 2 degrees. So yes, could be very heavy falling snow, but heavy accumulations probably less likely. But we'll have to see how it does play out. Again, this is one run, just giving us interest for early next week through the Christmas period. If you do look at the GEM, see how that does compare. Again, a westerly foe pushing in at the moment. So that northerly wind pushes in for the Christmas period. We go to quite cold northwesterly there, not producing that little low pressure system in the southeast. So no snow here for the southeast from the GEM, other than maybe a few wintry showers. And we stay generally cold through the 27th. For the 28th, we start to push in a milder westerly. And as I said at the start of the video, all these blues and low pressure systems developing towards Greenland and northern Canada, very much on board with a westerly flow. Now, the jet stream is shifted further southwards here, so we would generally be average to below average for many northern areas, average to maybe slightly above average in southern areas, and it would be quite stormy and pretty unsettled as well. If you run it back and just have a look at the Christmas period, you can see through Boxing that cold air mass does spread through, lasts a few days to about the 28th before westerly flow does push in. So again, another 2 or 3 day little cold spell there. And again, GFS showing some interest there of producing snow, but we'll have to look at that in more detail near the time once the UKV gets in range of that. But again, GM not producing that low pressure system, so there it would just be going to be cold, frosty, and a little bit wintry in terms of a few wintry showers in the north. If we do look at the ECM at WF, again, a westerly wind at the moment. That northerly wind pushes in through the Christmas period, and by Boxing Day, cold northwesterly winds pushing in for the jet stream just pushes through on the 27th. So sort of a 1 day cold spell there, and then eventually we just go unsettled. Jet stream shifted southwards, but a pretty unsettled, mild, and westerly theme developing here. So again, not showing anything prolonged in terms of cold weather. Again, you run it back, look at the upper air temperatures. I think generally colder there for a day or two for mild and westerly from the southwest. As I said, it still probably would be cool or colder than average in the north with the jet stream, a few hundred miles further southwards. But again, not producing anything particularly cold for this time of year at all. So green runs generally showing the same sort of pattern, but all doing it slightly differently. Again, no huge blocking appearing yet. It does look like that sort of signal has been crushed a bit by the increasing power of the jet stream, and those low pressures trying to return to Greenland. As I said in yesterday's video, could it be a coupling up of the polar vortex and the stratospheric polar vortex and the tropospheric polar vortex? We can't say for certain yet, but if this pattern did continue for the next few days, then we'd probably be saying yes to that, and those blocking signals could really be crushed over the course of the next week or two. And it could be one of those patterns where the longer range runs keep producing blocking, but as soon as it comes to the short range and that polar vortex connection gets verified and the jet stream gets more less amplified, and more just flat and strong, then it would crush those blocking chances. So we'll have to see what happens over the course of the next few weeks. But if you are looking for a bitterly cold spell once again, another colder period, maybe some more widespread snow, there's no real opportunities on the horizon at this stage, just some marginal chances over the course of Boxing Day, the days following that, and generally a westerly flow which does bring colder air masses in for a time, but again nothing sustained at all and would be mainly focused in the north. If we do finish by having a look at the ensembles, you can see generally average for London over the course of the next couple of weeks, oscillating quite a bit up and down, but generally average conditions around the freezing mark at 850 HPA. So cold enough to give sort of 5, 6, 7 degrees in the day, and maybe touching on freezing overnight where we see clearer skies, but nothing colder or milder really than that. See the brief colder spell towards Boxing Day and the days following that. Some runs keeping on a little bit longer, but most returns to average again for about the 29th. So it could be a bit of winteriness there, but again, not expecting anything at this stage. GFS is very speculative with that, but generally around average. If we do look at Glasgow, you'll be able to see that it is generally colder. Again, still close to average, but Glasgow's average is a couple of degrees colder than London's. So generally around the -5 line, so generally producing temperatures in the low single digits, with snow quite a lot over the higher ground and probably to lower lying areas as well. But yeah, generally below average over the course of the next week or two before trending more towards average or above average for the start of January. But there is going to be a lot of precipitation with this westerly flow pushing back in, so it is going to be pretty unsettled. If you do just finish by looking at the ECMWF ensemble members, just comparing that for London for the midnight run, you can see the big dip through the 27th, 28th, 29th potentially, but generally around average or maybe above average pretty much consistently over the course of the next few weeks, and no real signs of any major cold on the horizon at all. Now it can flip, it can change very quickly, but at the moment we're not seeing any big signs at all of anything cold. In fact, it could be quite unsettled, quite stormy and westerly as we head into the new year. So yeah, no real chance of any major cold on the horizon, but definitely the long range forecasts are still suggesting there's maybe some more legs in the blocking. But could we just be seeing a lull at the moment, or could this be a sign of changing long-term climate drivers back from the La Nina and blocking we have at the moment, maybe towards more of a powerful polar vortex taking over with the westerly, stormy, unsettled conditions prevailing? we'll have to see into the new year, but for the time being, it's generally around average, colder spell for a time through the Christmas period, especially in the north, but could come to the south for a few days starting on Boxing Day and could bring a bit of winteriness and a bit of seasonable weather. But other than that, as I said, it's generally around average. Quite a few bouts of precipitation around, so it's not going to even be dry. So again, nothing really too special on the horizon at the moment. But of course, we'll keep an eye on those colder days around the Boxing Day, 27th, 28th, as there could be some wintry potential there widely. But we'll have to see what happens over the next few days. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.